So imagine you're a Russian naval officer in August 1807. Events have not exactly gone great on land in the wars against France. However, France has not been your main opponent. No, that honor has gone to the Ottomans. As part of Russia's war against the Ottoman Empire that began in late 1806, you've won multiple naval battles against your enemy. After victories at the Battle of the Dardanelles and the Battle of Athos, the Ottoman Navy is almost completely out of action. New orders have come down, however. With the war against France over and the Ottomans no longer posing too large of a naval threat, the fleet is to be moved from the Mediterranean to the Baltic, where war is brewing. Good news is that France no longer poses a threat at sea. Bad news, Russia is about to declare war on Britain, who you have to sail past to get to the Baltic. That was the situation that Admiral Dmitry Senyavin found himself in as he began his journey. His fleet consisted of around 10 warships of varying size, and at first the voyage was able to progress without much trouble. That would change, however, after a storm forced the fleet to take refuge in Lisbon in November. The Portuguese royal family fled to Brazil to escape the approaching French army led by Junot, who swiftly occupied Lisbon. At sea, a British fleet consisting of around 25 ships of varying size blockaded Lisbon. Senyavin now found himself in an extremely difficult position. While Russia was technically at war with Britain, neither side particularly desired an escalation to their conflict between them. In addition, while Russia was now allied with France, Senyavin had no love for the French. Even if he aided the French, his fleet would likely be destroyed or captured by the British eventually. Senyavin, after careful consideration of his position, declared he was neutral in the Peninsular War. The French were not happy with his decision. Constant messages were sent between both sides as the French attempted to convince Senyavin to have his fleet aid them against the British. Senyavin refused every time, however, as diplomatically as possible. Even after orders arrived from Russia for Senyavin to aid the French, he steadfastly avoided committing his forces to a fight he would undoubtedly lose. His refusal to commit the Russian fleet proved to be the correct decision, as the French forces were forced to abandon Lisbon in August 1808. Now, however, Senyavin was forced to negotiate with the British alone. The British were aware of the disagreement between Senyavin and the French, and starting in July were in communication with the Russian fleet, attempting to convince Senyavin to aid the British in the Peninsular War. While the Russian fleet was not large enough to play a critical role in the conflict, the Russian fleet aiding the British in any way would be a strong political move to show a divide in the alliance between Russia and France. Similar to his dealings with the French, however, Senyavin maintained his neutrality, refusing to aid either side. Once Lisbon was occupied by the British, however, the Russian fleet was put in an unwinnable position. The forts around the port were occupied, and Senyavin found guns aimed at his ships from all sides. While the British wanted to claim the Russian warships as trophies of war, Senyavin remained unwilling to surrender and ready to have his fleet go down fighting. Eventually, after tense negotiations between both sides, the British commander, Admiral Cotton, and Senyavin came to an unusual agreement. The Russian ships would sail to England, but not as prisoners, and with their flags still flying. The ships would remain in England until peace was made with Russia, at which point the ships would be returned. As for the crew, they'd be allowed to return to Russia at any time, leaving their ships behind. On August 31st, the Russian fleet, minus 2 ships that had to stay behind for repairs, left for England with a British escort. Upon arriving at Portsmouth, however, the Admiralty were not happy with the deal Cotton had made with Senyavin. The 2 ships left behind in Lisbon were seized, and the departure of the crews constantly delayed until they were finally allowed to return to Russia in August 5th, 1809. After a multi-year journey, Senyavin returned to Russia, only to fall into disgrace. Alexander was unhappy with Senyavin's actions, despite the way Senyavin secured the best deal possible under the circumstances. All the ships that had sailed to England were eventually returned in 1813, honoring part of the deal that Senyavin had secured. As part of the Napoleonic Wars, the Lisbon incident did not have an overly large impact, but it is certainly an interesting event in a time period full of historic deeds.